Hello everyone, this is Tasha Nicole, the entrepreneur. If this is your first time coming across my content, allow me to introduce myself. I'm a self-employment tax strategist and business coach to aspiring and active solo entrepreneurs. Beyond tax saving services, I teach men and women how to professionalize their business from the start and how to run their business in a better way so they can increase their chances of small business success. I am based in New York, but I do service clients across the United States. I offer over 20 years of tax and business industry experience. Okay, so I'm recording this for video and also for audio to put on my podcast. So depending on where you're getting this content, stay tuned. If you're on my podcast, please get a copy of your W-2. This training, I'm going to be showing you how to read your W-2. And for those of you watching, you're going to get, obviously you can see what I'm showing you on my screen. A lot of people still to this day don't know how to read a W-2. And for people who are new to the working force, they definitely don't understand it. So it's about time y'all get to know your W-2. It's important for you to know, what's on here. Okay, so first, if you look to the left, this is like a traditional W-2. If you look to the left, you're going to see the employer identification number. Okay, so that's your employer's number. Okay, just like how we have a social security number, all of you should know that your company that you work for has an employer identification number, right? Then right underneath that in section C is the employer's name, address, and zip code. All right. The control number, you're going to see something called control number. That's not important for you. Now, below that, your name and address is going to be there, which you always want to make sure is correct, especially like if your name changed or your address changed or anything like that. So always check and make sure that's correct. Now, let's go to the right side of the form. Okay, box 1 is where you're going to see your wages, tips, and other compensation. Okay, that's your main number that you're always working with when, your taxes are being prepared or when you're doing your own taxes. And so that number is in box 1. And again, you always want to make sure that number is correct, because you'd be surprised how many clients I've actually had come to me and this number was wrong. So you always want to make sure it's correct, check your last pay stub and things like that, because if they report something wrong, remember, these go to the IRS, so they will have your information all the way wrong. Okay, now let's go to box 2. Box 2 is your federal income tax withheld. Okay, that's all the taxes that came out for the year. All right, and that's an important number to know because, hey, especially if you're in like a higher income bracket, this number right here is pretty high. All right, so we always looking for ways to bring that down, but I'm not going to get into that. Just right now going over how to read your W-2. Okay, box 3 is your Social Security wages. All right, now usually box 3 is the same number that's in box 1. Sometimes it's a little different, and I'll explain when I get down to box 12. But box 3 is your Social Security wages. Okay, that's your taxable amount. And then box 4 shows the amount of Social Security tax that was withheld for the Social Security wage amount that was in box 3. Okay, box 5 is your Medicare wages, and box 6 is your Medicare tax that was withheld. Okay, so usually always 3 and 5 are definitely the same, even if they differ from what's in box 1. And the reason why that is, I'm going to jump down for a minute to box 12. So some of you who are having money come out for 401k and things like that, remember that money comes out on a pre-tax basis, which means it came out when you were paid, etc., etc. So that's why if box 3 is different from 1, that's because if you do the math, if you add the box from 12A for like your 401k, if you add that to box 1, you're going to see that that amount is the same in box 3. Okay, and the reason that is because if you did have money coming out of your 401k and things like that, that's not taxable income. See, this this number in box 1, that's your taxable income. So because your 401k money came out, which is not taxable, that's why it's not in box 1, and that's why it's different from 3 and 5. So I hope I explained that good. Now, Social Security tips in box 7, that's usually going to be an allocated tips box 8. These boxes are usually for people who work jobs such as like waiters and waitresses and things like that. That's a whole nother realm of taxes, and their tips get reported a certain way. And so, but if you're not like a waiter or waitress, and you're rarely going to have anything in these boxes. Okay, dependent care benefits, box 10. That is if your employer offers you something like what is called dependent care benefits, and you had money coming out of your paycheck or whatever for that purpose, this amount goes there. Now, that amount is important, especially for people who claim child care credit, okay, because it's like you can't get it both ways. If you were getting the dependent care benefit, then you're not really going to get the child care credit on your tax returns. And if you didn't participate in the dependent care benefits, then you do get the child care credit when you're filing your tax returns. Okay, so that's what that is. Now, box 12, okay, 12A, B, C, D. Now, those boxes are for what I mentioned. It's going to be for, as I mentioned, like withdrawals coming out for your IRA, your 401k. Another thing that goes in these boxes, your employer is now required, it's been for like about a year or two now, a few years, your employer is now required to report and show on the W-2 how much they contribute to your health coverage. So like that amount is going to show with a code W. Okay, so whatever you see code W in the section 12, and then the amount, that shows how much your employer contributed to your health care plan. Now let's come down a little further to box 15. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go over here to box 13. Box 13 is, you're going to see certain things checked here. Okay, for like retirement plan. If you participate in your retirement plan, this box should always be checked. This third-party sick pay, if you had happened to have been out on sick leave for some time and you were getting getting money from that source, then they would check this box, okay? Now, for box 15, all right, your state should go here. Now, some people actually work in more than one state, so they live in one state, they work in another state, and so forth. So sometimes you're going to see 2 lines of state information, all right, and that's what's going to go here. Now, the employer's state ID number usually is the same as the employer's employer identification number up in section B where I showed you. But sometimes there are some states that they actually have a different number. So that's important to know. Again, especially if you're DIYing your own taxes, you want to know and understand these things. Sometimes this number is different. Box 16, okay, is your state wages. And again, that's usually the same amount that's in box 1. But sometimes it can be different. And again, as I mentioned, for some people who are working in 2 states, that's where you're sometimes going to see something different, because part of it is reported on one state line and the other part is reported on another. So, just make sure you're checking out those numbers and making sure everything adds up. Now, box 17 is your state income tax that was withheld from your state wages. Box 18, they call it local wages, and that's really for wherever it applies. Like, as an example, I mentioned to you, I'm in New York, so like people who live in New York City, they pay a local tax, okay, which you'll see in box 19. But yes, so you're charged locally for your wages, and the amount of tax that comes out for that is in box 19, okay, local income tax. And box 20 shows your locality name. As an example, for New York City, this would say NYC. Now, if you don't see anything in these boxes, and it's supposed to be something in those boxes, again, you'd be surprised, especially for people who maybe they were living in a state that they first were getting taxed locally, but now they relocated. And so maybe vice versa, let me say that. So maybe they were living somewhere where they didn't need to have local taxes coming out. Now they relocate to like New York City. Now they are supposed to have local taxes coming out, but they didn't. Okay, and that's what's going to usually result. Some people will say, oh, well, why do I owe state and city? This is why. Because if you moved from one place to the other and one place was taxing you locally and the other place wasn't, then that's where. So you always want to make sure, if you're supposed to be getting local taxes taken out, make sure your employer is taking out local taxes. Okay, and so that's all important. Now, what did I want to show you? I'm just going over some notes for those of you who've seen and listened to a couple of my content. I know I always come with notes. And let me just jump back here to box 14 again. Sometimes, like if you're in a union, your union dues are going to show here in box 14. Okay, now, I did want to mention, now, since we're on the subject of W-2s, your employer is going to be getting those out to you like ASAP, but they do legally have until January 31st to mail them out. So don't be alarmed if you don't see that it didn't come in, etc., because legally they do have till the 31st to mail it out. And then once that they drop that in the mail, you know it's going to take a few days to get to you. So sometimes you might not really have it until early February. Okay, now, I always tell people, give it some time, because sometimes they're just really slow. But if you see what the IRS will say is that kind of give it until the end of February. If by the end of February you still haven't seen your W-2, you definitely want to follow up with your employer, and find out what's going on. Maybe they had your address incorrect or something like that. And so what I wanted to show you, though, if there's a time where maybe there's some issue, you have people in all kind of situations, and maybe sometimes people stop working for a job and now, they didn't get the W-2. So there are some resources around it. One, you can always contact the Human Resources Department of where you work or where you used to work. Ask them, can they resend it or whatever. If you had happened to lose it, even per se, if you did get it and you need it, they can always reissue it. But if you do have a problem with that, you can actually request a transcript. It's called a wage and income transcript from IRS, and I'll show you how to get one. You can actually go to my site, all right? My site is hardgeconnections.com. That's HARDGE connections.com. And if you go over to my tax center, go to the drop down, and you're going to see, where is it? Okay, IRS forms. All right, go to IRS forms on my website, scroll down. You're going to see request a copy. I have quite a few things here, but what you'd be looking for if you needed this wage and income transcript, you want to come down here where it says request a copy of a transcript of your tax return. I actually need to edit that, because it's not just the tax return, it's other transcripts that you may need. So let's click that, and it takes you right to the form that you need. Okay, it's called request for transcript of tax return. Like, that is the name of the request that you're making, but I just want to show you the section you fill in if all you need is the W-2, and that's right here, section 8. And for those of you on my podcast, this form is called 4506T, but again, if you go to my website and you click the request for transcript of tax return, you'll see the form I'm talking about, and then you can just fill in all what applies to you, name, name, address, and so forth. And then you come down here and you check this box to the right, because all you need is your Form W-2 and things like that. One good thing about requesting the wage and income transcript from IRS is that they are usually going to have every source of income you received. So that's also great for people who maybe worked multiple jobs, didn't get all the W-2s. Sometimes requesting this wage and income transcript from IRS is good, because it's going to be everything that was reported, that they captured. So that's a good thing to cross-reference your own information. And again, if you never got it, or if you misplaced it. But one thing I do want to mention, when you request this transcript, it's important to understand that what's missing from the transcript is the state information. So I'm going to jump back to the other screen, because remember I mentioned state wages in box 16 and local wages in box 18, and box 17 had state income tax withheld. That type of information, that's not going to be on the transcript from IRS. And if you ever do need to get that, you can actually simply request that information from Social Security Administration. Okay, when you get income statements from them, they have this information, the state wages, the state income tax, and so forth. Okay, so I hope you found this information useful. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And for those of you who are actually side hustlers, entrepreneurs, and things like that, if this is like your first year filing and you're a little confused with what to do, you should definitely download my Tax Season Survival Guide Entrepreneurs Edition. And you can go to, I'm actually going to create a URL for this because I keep having to give this out. But you're going to go to https://payhip.com/b/large capital S capital O lowercase y capital L. Okay, I apologize for that. I'm actually going to leave the link in the description of wherever you found this video, but I had to repeat that out for my podcast people who are listening. But I'm actually going to do an easier link to just start giving everybody. Okay, so thank you for listening. Until next time, take care.